What's up, YouTube? Today I'm doing another how I use my, and today we're going to be doing how I use my Crossway Heirloom wide margin goat skin. This Bible I've done reviews on before, so if you look at my channel you'll probably get a better look at the review. But here we go. Here's the goat skin dark brown leather. Nice grain on this Bible. Always like to just look at the grain on these things. They're just so cool. Got the raised hubs, got the 4 ribbons. So 4 ribbons, nice raised hubs, the overkill of ESV on the spine. And this paper is thin. So most of the Crossway Heirloom Edition Bibles, they have thin paper. And because they have thin paper, it can be a little unnerving to write in them. So that was my dilemma. I was wanting a wide margin Crossway edition. I didn't want to go to the Cambridge, although I love the Cambridge. I might get one day. But anyhow, I wanted to try the Crossway wide margin. Somebody on Facebook was very generous to send me a True Tone edition. Has thicker paper, and I really like the layout of the Bible. However, I did want the goat skin, and it is thinner. It's a thinner Bible than the True Tone. Okay, so I wanted this Bible for a preaching and teaching Bible. I wanted something I can kind of pick up, carry around with me a little bit in the pulpit. I wanted something that wasn't too heavy to put in my backpack, every single day, or take with me in the car when I, took a bigger Bible and not one of my pit minions or something like that. So this Bible is just a great addition to my everyday use of Bibles. How I use this one, I use this to preach from. So because I preach from my Bible, and it is a wide margin, I did want to write in it. I was watching a video this morning by Jason Mayfield. His channel is called Grace for Life. Highly recommend you check that dude out. He's very funny. I watch all of his videos. Subscribe to his stuff. You'll be happy that you did. He has great videos. Anyway, so I'm watching him this morning. He was doing a thin line thing, and he's talking about thinner Bible paper and being concerned about writing in it. And it made me think, it's like, well, I do write in mine, and it's got the same kind of paper, that young blood paper that's really thin. So that's how I use my Bible. I use this to preach from, and I want to just give you a few examples of how I do that. Don't write extensive notes in the Bible. I just don't. I manuscript all my sermons out. I save them to Google OneDrive, and I have all my sermons saved there. So what I do, last Sunday I preached a sermon, and it was called A Good Weapon. And it was Hebrews 4:12 that I preached from, and just a couple of points that I had written down. So I just have a small reference here, and I have used this highlighter, Z-Bright highlighter, and I used a fine point. It's got 2 points. It's got a medium chisel point and a fine point at the opposite end. I use the fine point to highlight this. Okay, because we're going to look at the opposite side in just a second on this thin paper. So I'll highlight what I want to highlight. Now, right with my Pigma 005, I normally use the red. This is written in red. Then I made a few points. So now when I'm going back and I'm looking at Hebrews 4:12, and I want to get a better in-depth look of what I was talking about, or some of the other references, scripture references I use to talk about this passage of scripture, all I got to do is go to my phone, go to my tablet, my computer, open up OneDrive, look for A Good Weapon under my sermons, and it's got all my notes. I manuscript everything, tons of references in there. So that's kind of how I use this. I use this just to give me a good reference points. That's the sermon. Gives me some points to look at as I'm preaching, just to kind of remind myself of where I'm going. That's how I use this. Now, how does this ink do on the paper? If you look at the opposite side of this, here is the ghosting on the back end. Obviously, the camera always looks much worse than it does to your eye. But if you notice here, you can't see the highlighting. So when I use my highlighter, this deal here, this Z-Bright guy, doesn't show through. If you use that fine tip on this very thin paper, it doesn't show through at all. So I like that. The 005s work really well. You're going to get on this, there's nothing that you can do to eliminate show through or ghosting, but you can eliminate the bleed through. So There's no bleed through with these pens, but there's a little bit of ghosting. The red ink, I find, I've only used the blue, black, and red. The red ink, I find, does really well. It's not that bad. Let's look at a couple of other. Here's something in blue. If we can go to the book of Acts, I know I got stuff in here. Been doing a series on it. Okay, so again, here's a sermon that I had done. It's just simply called Obedience. I'll go back into my Google OneDrive, look at Obedience, and I've got a full work through of my sermon title. Let's look at, and you can see on this side here, you can see some show through from stuff I'd written on the opposite side. Let's flip this page back and let's look. There's your show through. Look at that. I used the chisel side on that highlighter. You can kind of see it on the camera a little bit. Here's the back side of the page. I do write over the opposite side. So there's some pages where I've written on this side and then I've flipped over and I've written on the opposite side too, right over the ghosting, and it does not bother me at all. If I have side points just some side notes that I want to reference or something I want to jump out at me in this Bible, I'll do this right here. I'll make little squiggly marks and I'll highlight those squiggly marks and I'll write what I want to write here in the margins. This doesn't have anything to do necessarily with my sermons. I just do that. To let it jump out at me. There's something else I've written and kind of written over. Here we go. Okay. Right here. Here's a sermon title, underline it, points I've made right there, red and blue. So if you look here, I've written over something on the back side of this page. So I've written over things. And when I'm reading this, not a problem at all. Let's look at the opposite side. Notice this was just a point that I made, and I just squiggly mark, highlight. Doesn't have anything to do with the sermon. Notice I circled something here, and it's right here on the other side. All that to say, if you want to write in these Bibles, these heirloom editions with a thin paper, I like it personally. Do I want thicker paper? You know what? One day I might get a thicker paper Bible. Right now, I don't need it. I mean, I just don't need it. If I am completely, like I'll see some of you guys on Facebook, in your wide margins, you guys will just straight up write just solid paragraphs. The margins is just straight ink from you writing in it. If I were to do that, just straight writing, just all the way through, I would probably get a Cambridge. Or I would stick with rebond like the True Tone edition of this with a thicker paper, because all that might be distracting. I'm not sure. But for what I use this for, this stuff right here, I am not distracted in the least little bit at all. I try not to write all up in the text. I try not to write in there too much because I read this a lot and I don't want that to be super distracting. I have my True Tone as a workbook to just write all through there and make a mess of it. I try not to make too much of a mess of this. See, look, I've underlined some things here, and let's find it here. See, well, you can't see it because I've got some stuff here. But you can't even really, it just doesn't show through. So if you're looking at a heirloom edition and you're thinking of writing in them and want to know about the ghosting deal, hopefully this will kind of help you. And if you're a pastor, a preacher, Bible teacher out there, and this has been a Bible that you wanted to use, this is a system that I use. I just kind of make titles of my sermon notes. I manuscript everything, so I can look at this and I can have a whole idea. I can go back and read the whole idea of the passage of Scripture that I was preaching on. Anyway, hope that helps. Hope you have a great day, and God bless.